In 2011, Nigeria's general election was appraised for being well managed, but post-election violence claimed 800 lives over 3 days in northern Nigeria and displaced 65,000 people, making the election the most violent in Nigeria's history. Having a repeat is not something electorate wish for as the February approaches, but the spate of violence attacks on the facilities of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) in several states in Nigeria is a grave cause for concern. The attacks are more intensified in the southeastern part of the country. One of the latest attacks happened on December the 12th, 2022 in Imo State and recorded as at then 59th on INEC facilities spread across 29 states since 2019. But there have been other attacks also on police formation or security personnel even in the new year. There are calls for postponement of the election from some elder statesmen, notably Chief Afe Babalola, who once conversed something akin to an interim government. But I dare say there is no better arrangement in a constitutional democracy that can replace the need for a free, fair, and open electioneering process where all stakeholders can cast their votes for their preferred candidates. Voters' turnout remains crucial to the February elections. There was an increase from 52% to 69% between 1999 to 2003 elections. Then, a downward trend in 2007 with 57%, 54% in 2011, and 44% in 2015 election cycle. By 2019, only 34.75% of eligible voters turned out according to figures released by INEC. In November the 6th, 2021, gubernatorial poll in Anambra State only has 10.24% of voters exercising their civic rights. There is therefore a link between violence and voter turnout. The Joint Security Task Force must no doubt save the day for the success of the upcoming elections. The program is The Podium. Welcome. My name is GBOLABO, famous call. Thanks for joining us. We'll take a breather now and be right back.
Solution to it is as soon as the present government completes its term of office, do not hold a new election. Rather, let us have an interim government. You are safe on the road, you are safe in your house, you are safe on the farm. So those who are governing us have duty to look into that.
By May 29th, if there is no elected government, our constitution has not provided for an interregnum. You shouldn't give a gap. Otherwise, you are creating room for anarchy. And what will be the process for selecting the interim government? Because after May 29th, the president may not have constitutional powers to function as a president anymore.
This is an invitation to constitutional crisis. This is invitation to cause serious political disorder in this country. So I call on each and every respected Nigerian and Nigerian to reject the call for convocation of international government after the expression of President Muhammadu Buhari administration.
Safa pelisizo simnyama Iwasafa Isizo saba Kavula mo Anithaleni ko Kalize Wemaye wemodo Safa pelisizo simnyama.
Oh my God. Oh. It feel like Satan won't tell us what to we never hear before. Baba Dega, plus Soli Baba Dega, Sabada Badam Dabadam Deda Badam Deda Badam Deda. small thing, no. No be small thing, no. I said no be small thing, no. No be small thing, no. No be small thing, no. Hey. Looking back to all the years that you and I have spent together, it seems like you've been playing me all along. So many times you asked me to put the whole of my trust in you. So many times you betrayed me and played me for a fool. Why don't we work together so the future will be brighter? Cause it be like you and I, we didn't need each other all the time. All the time. Another year has come, and now you want my trust once more. Oh, no. It be like say you want to tell me another story again. It be like say you want to act another movie again. It be like say you want to go another coding again. It be like say you want to dance, la la la, nothing you dance again. You want to sing another song again. It be like say you want to go. See, all I wanna say is that they don't really care about us. Cause all they really want to do is just to get in touch with big bucks. Cause they think that the money gives them the power. But the power is nothing if your people cannot get quality education. The power is nothing if your people keep dying of disease and starvation. The power is nothing if your people have no peace. No peace. The power is nothing if your people cannot live in unity. Hey. See why you keep on deceiving the people, my brother, my sister. See why you make all these people to they fight one another. Oh no, only God can judge you now. 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 Another year has come, and now you want my vote once more. Oh no, it be like say they want to tell me another story again. It be like say they want to act another movie again. It be like say they want to do another deceiving again. It be like say they want to dance, la la la, nothing new dance again. They want to sing another song. They want to sing. It be like say they want to dance. They want to dance. I dedicate this one to all of the shady politicians. We go promise and fail and they make the people live in harsh conditions. Yeah, yeah. Dedicate this one to all of the shady politicians. Yeah, yeah. Why don't you change your ways? Change your ways now. Make the people live the way they're supposed to live. Hey, hey. Don't be smart, you know. As you see me so smart, you know. Don't be smart. I no send you. All of the shady politicians, as you see me so smart, I no send you. All of the shady politicians.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
ọpẹ́ mi kò ì tó ojoojúmọ́ ni ó máa dúpẹ́.
èwo ló dé tẹ̀ ń jó tẹ̀ ń dúpẹ́ báyìí kí lẹ̀ ń dúpẹ́ lé lórí o.
ṣebí àwọn ọmọ yín ni gbogbo ìdánwò wọn tí wọ́n ṣe lásìkò yìí ni wọ́n ṣe dáadáa.
ṣé lóòótọ́.
bẹ́ẹ̀ni ní kété tí wọ́n ti ròyìn apes tutorial classes fún mi tí mo dẹ̀ ti kó wọn lọ ni wọ́n ti ń ṣe dáadáa.
láti jẹ́ kàn mọ̀ tí inú ò ṣàṣeyọrí bí àwọn ọmọ tèmi nínú ìdánwò UTME post UTME WAEC NECO lọ́dún 2023 Apex tutorial classes ní kẹ́ẹ̀kọ́ wọn lọ ètò ẹ̀kọ́ àárọ̀ wà bẹ́ẹ̀ làwọn tí wọ́n bá ráyè lè wá jókòó gbọ́ ẹ̀kọ́ tiwọn lọ́sàn-án ìforúkọsílẹ̀ tún ti ètò ẹ̀kọ́ ti bẹ̀rẹ̀ ní Apex tutorial classes ẹ kàn sí wa ní adjacent welfare hospital Old Ife Road Ìbàdàn àti ní ẹ̀gbẹ́ mobile filling station UI Ọjọ́ Road Ìbàdàn His Grace Plaza opposite Èrúwà Mutapa Ẹlẹ́yẹlé Ìbàdàn àti ní Mazak petrol station Oríta Apẹ̀rẹ̀ Ìbàdàn 0817-202-7411 0805-085-4922 Apex tutorial classes ọ̀gá ni wá láàrin àwọn tí ń fún àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ní ìgbáradì fún ìdánwò wọn.
ọ̀rẹ́ wa Fẹ́mi o ó máa yé jẹ bàjẹ́.
bẹ́ẹ̀ ni o ó rántí dátà wàásù tó máa ń ṣe láti lo YouTube fún wákàtí kan.
ìwọ kan já sóje yẹn àwọn èèyàn máa ń mọ gbogbo nǹkan ìgbàlódé tó ń sọ kútú wọ́wọ́.
ó tún máa ń mọ bá a ṣe ń dẹ́rìn pa àwọn èèyàn pẹ̀lú fáàrí tó pọ̀.
ó yẹ kó o rántí àpèjẹ́.
arákùnrin ṣe fúnra rẹ̀ àti wo bó ṣe lè di èyí tàbí tọ̀hún gbogbo níṣe ni bọ̀dá yẹn.
ṣàlẹ̀ wa wá wo bó o ṣe lè di aṣaṣọ lóge.
ra data fún wákàtí kan YouTube ní $50 tàbí wákàtí mẹ́ta fún $100 lórí ìlà MTN *131*8*1# lónìí.
ọ̀rẹ́ so ti dọ́fíìsì wọn ṣé mo ṣe wí lórí àwọn èròjà sólà tí mo sọ fún ọ so orí wọn níbẹ̀ lọ́pọ̀ sọ́jà àwọn òwọ́n jù so ti rojúlówó Novest Solar product tó jẹ́ ojúlówó ní Novest Solar shop so ń gbádùn product wọn.
gbogbo béèrè tó béèrè lọ́wọ́ mi pátá bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo bá.
generator lóríṣiríṣi tó ń lo sólà tí náà fi lè ṣẹ́jú ní tòjò tẹ̀rùn solar water ball iṣẹ́ tiẹ̀ ní kó fami nínú kànga láì lóná ọba solar street light yóò fààyè gbòkùnkùn bírímù solar fan lóríṣiríṣi tó ń bá ooru bẹ́ẹ̀ fan wọ̀yá àjà ní Novest Solar shops yìí pitimuni solar panel fún títà lórí inverters batteries tó jẹ́ ojú mi dá solar kit solar generator tó ń lo iná lágbára ní gbogbo ìgbà láì sanwó oṣooṣù.
wo ọ̀rẹ́ ìròyìn ọ̀tá fojúbà nǹkan kan mo wá lọ ṣùgbọ́n ọjà mẹ́fà mo kó jáde ńbẹ̀.
fún ìwọ tó o ti mọ̀ ó pé ọkọ ra solar product ní Novest Solar shop kàn sí Novest Solar shop ní Ìbàdàn office Akíndélé plaza opposite Alámọ̀sẹ̀gbà stadium Èkó tẹ̀dó Ìbàdàn telephone
0811-799-8800.
ó pé ọ kó o rajà ní Novest Solar shop.
My people perish for lack of knowledge. Reuben George Theological Seminary, Ibadan, an affiliate of Ajayi Crowther University, Oyo, and Christ for the Nations Institute, Dallas, USA, offers comprehensive training in the Word of God. The seminary offers certificate in theology, diploma in theology and religious studies, Bachelor of Arts in theology and religious studies, executive postgraduate diploma in pastoral studies, Masters of Arts in Christian leadership and pastoral studies, Master of Divinity. Are you a pastor, evangelist, elder,
deacon, or deaconess,
teacher, or someone who seeks to know more about God? Reuben George Theological Seminary is the place to be. Contact the registrar at Gospel Town, Arulogun Road, Ojo, Ibadan, or visit www.rigets.com.ng. Admission is in progress. Contact 0805-304-0344, 0805-304-0344. Reuben George Theological Seminary, Center for Sound Theological Education. Announcer, Registrar.
Iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ ṣe pàtàkì nínú ètò ọrọ̀ ajé orílẹ̀-èdè Nàìjíríà bẹ̀rẹ̀ láti ìlà oòrùn gúúsù títí dé àríwá ìwọ̀ oòrùn láti pèsè oúnjẹ aṣaralóore, ire ọ̀gbìn, ìpèsè iṣẹ́ lọ́pọ̀ yanturu. Ṣùgbọ́n ìfàsẹ́yìn tó ń kojú iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ ń kọ́? Kí làwọn àdójúkọ tó ń kojú ìdàgbàsókè iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀? Kí lọ́nà àbáyọ àti àǹfààní tó sodo sídìí iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀? Ìpàdé dorí ètò Àgbẹ̀ lọ́ba, ètò tuntun tó gbájúmọ́ iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ lórí ìkànnì 32 FM 94.9 ní gbogbo ọjọ́ àbámẹ́ta Sátidé bẹ̀rẹ̀ láti aago 6 ìrọ̀lẹ́ sí 7 àṣálẹ́. Àgbẹ̀lọ́ba yóò fi àǹfààní lélẹ̀ láti jíròrò lórí ìwúlò àfojúsùn okòòwò tó sodo sídìí iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ àti àǹfààní bí àgbẹ̀ ṣe lè rí owó yá fún ìtẹ̀síwájú iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ tí kò gbọdọ̀ parun. Ẹ darapọ̀ mọ́ Peter Ọlásùpọ̀ Captain P2 àtàwọn akọ́ṣẹ́mọṣẹ́ onímọ̀ nípa iṣẹ́ àgbẹ̀ lórí ètò Àgbẹ̀lọ́ba. Ìpàdé dọjọ́ Sátidé àbámẹ́ta láago 6 sí 7 àṣálẹ́. Àgbẹ̀lọ́ba ọba làgbẹ̀.
Just because you do not take an interest in politics doesn't mean politics won't take an interest in you.
The funds spent were properly spent because we got them from intervention funds.
Only you waka come. There is God.
I don't know which party my wife belongs to, but she belongs to my kitchen and my living room and the other room.
Stay in tune with politics on 32 FM 94.9.
Solution to it is as soon as the present government completes its term of office, do not hold a new election. Rather, let us have an interim government. You are safe on the road, you are safe in your house, you are safe on the farm. So those who are governing us have duty to look into that.
By May 29th, if there is no elected government, our constitution has not provided for an interregnum. You shouldn't give a gap. Otherwise, you are creating room for anarchy. And what will be the process for selecting the interim government? Because after May 29th, the president may not have constitutional powers to function as a president anymore.
This is an invitation to constitutional crisis. And this is invitation to cause serious political disorder in this country. So I call on each and every respected Nigerian to reject the call for convocation of international government after the expression of President Muhammadu Buhari administration.
You're still on to the podium. It's coming to you live from 32 FM 94.9. And of course, we are going straight into conversation properly this morning. Of course, we're looking at the 2023 elections and security concerns, like what we just heard. All right, let me just introduce you to our guest this morning. We have Professor Oyewo. He's the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice here in Oyo State, a professor of public law and a legal consultant on constitutional, administrative, governance and development law. He's also the former Dean Faculty of Law, University of Lagos, UNILAG. And we have him joining us on the podium this morning. It's great to have you here, Prof.
Thank you very much.
All right. Let's start off this way. The insert you listened to was that of Afe Babalola. And of course, part of the things that Afe Babalola talked about is also a senior lawyer, a very respected one at that. Before all, what we have as a major concerns being raised across the length and breadth of the country presently in terms of whether or not we should be dealing with instances of postponement. There's also an issue of will this be allowed to go ahead as a matter of fact, given the fact that we have a constitution that says after every 4 years there must be an election. But there's also a question of insecurity. Now, the likes of Afe Babalola saw into the future, and he was saying there should be an interim national government before actually thinking about an election. You know, also as a senior lawyer in this aspect, can we afford to say we will not hold elections as a result of insecurity in the country itself?
Thank you very much. I believe what Chief Afe Babalola is speaking about relates to what we call the backsliding, or what we call democracy failures in most of Africa and even some parts of the world. You can see countries like America have experienced challenges with their democracy. We've had investigation by their Congress on the attack on the Congress during President Trump, who said elections did not hold and all that. We've just had the same thing in Brazil. So I think that's what is panning out, that people are having anxiety about our own democracy, especially because of insecurity. When you hear people of stature like Chief Afe Babalola cry out, they are seeing something and they are raising alarm on the insecurity within the Nigerian, state. Now, when you look back to the elections that we have had in the past, issue of insecurity have always been there, but elections have always gone on. So to that extent, I think what that indicates for us is that they are raising alarm for the government to heighten security, to improve on the security architecture, and even to reform it for purposes of dealing with it. Now, having spoken against this background, you ask yourself, what is being canvassed? Is it possible under the constitutional and legal framework that we operate in our constitutional democracy? And the answer will be no, because the Nigerian constitution is very specific about how elections are to come in. And then, of course, you also have the Electoral Act that specifies that INEC is to conduct election. When it comes to issue of security, also under the Constitution, we have a security architecture of the armed forces. Since this statement had been made, I don't think the armed forces have come out to say that they cannot conduct election. What they will do is to mobilize into areas of insecurity. We remember when we were conducting his election in 2015 in the face of Boko Haram, insurgency, terrorism of ISWAP and all that, we still conducted elections. And what they did was to concentrate armed forces in those areas of insecurity. Now, against that background, you look at where are those pockets of insecurity in Nigeria that threatens, the conduct of election. No doubt about it, the Boko Haram insurgency have been pushed back in the Northeast to a large extent that people can manage life and conduct them to conduct election. The area of insurgency that we are seeing is in the Southeast. And I believe that also is tied to the continuous and continuing incarceration of Nnamdi that is causing the leader of IPOB. So I believe being conversant or conscious of that, the government is going towards some bargaining to ensure that he is released. Now, after his release, the question is, will that stop the IPOB, agitation for secession from Nigeria? And probably the answer will be no. So that will mean that security apparatus will have to counter any insurgency or insecurity that might be threatened during the election. So to that extent, I believe that the alarm being raised by Chief Afe Babalola is to let the government of the day to know the challenges they will face in the conduct of election. But now, specifically on interim government.
Oh, okay, that's exactly where I'm going to.
Yeah, specifically on interim government, Nigeria's constitution does not accommodate interim government. And actually, if you do that, as some other people have said, you'll be causing a kind of a revolution because the government is supposed to transit from one elected government to the other. Our democracy is based on predictable we have now. It's as bad as what we had in 2015. So the cry for interim government may be an alarm that is being, over the situation that we have. But be that as it may, it's a call to duty, a call for distress, that this country is distressed, and we need to look at those existential challenges like insecurity that we face. And if those are addressed, then there may not be need for this, interim government. And interim government is actually not possible under the 1999 Constitution as amended.
Now, is there an admittance by the federal structure that there is a problem with insecurity? Because obviously, if you see the body language of the presidency and indeed the apparatus of governance in Nigeria, it's like everything is well and the elections will proceed. Now, we know as a matter of fact that there are pockets of crisis, especially in the eastern part of the country that you mentioned. Now, to what level of admittance have we seen in governance so far to all of these instances?
Well, if you look at the propaganda of the government, of the federal government especially, it's like they have pushed back against insurgency. And when they talk about insurgency, I believe their focus is on the Boko Haram and the ISWAP in the, in the northeast, the northwest, and the north central. And to that extent, if you compare statistically, from 2015 when they took over till now, there has been improvement in recovering. It's just that the insurgency has morphed into some other guerrilla, activities of kidnapping, banditry, which is still very prevalent. Most recently, the unthinkable happened when some people came from whatever name they call themselves to Edo State and went to a train station. Even before that, the banditry had been to our Nigerian Defense Academy, the citadel of our, defense architecture. They've been to train station in Kaduna. In fact, some roads in the north are not pliable. So while the general picture that is being painted, it seems to be that, we are making progress. On the other hand, the characteristics being manifested by this insurgency shows that while we seem to be winning on some fronts, we are losing on some fronts. And the issue of insurgency in the southeast has not been, definitely addressed. Well, maybe because it's a political agitation, and the federal government probably feel that they are not able to meet the demands of those people, especially the release of the leader. And the strategy I believe they will have is to release him as close as possible to the time of election so that they can maximize the value of the release and probably get him to, negotiate with his people to allow elections to go through.
Now, would you also align yourself with the thoughts? Let me share what Shogore has said. For instance, he's accusing the political class of conspiracy, and that this conspiracy is part of a way to actually frustrate the electoral umpire, to postpone the election by ensuring that there is no peace in the country itself. Would we now say what we've been seeing as crises are just the handiworks of some unscrupulous members of the political class itself?
I think that is overgeneralization. The dimensions of insecurity is such that you cannot, pinpoint and say, yes, there could be some irresponsible political class that are fueling in insurgency. Even now, we have even the governor of CBN being accused of terrorism. So you don't know what anybody is doing. But I can tell you that at least we practice federal system of government in Nigeria. So the initiative for dousing
is it really a federal system
on the constitutional arrangement that we have. And the practice in some areas yes, in some areas no. But by and large, I give you an example. The Southwest governors came together in addressing the issue of insurgency, the issue of insecurity, and they came up with an idea which was resisted to be the federal government, particularly the legal people at the federal government, were saying that it's inconsistent with the Constitution. But that wasn't the case. So we're able to push through with the legal counsel from the Southwest Attorneys General, the parliamentary, forum of the Southwest, and the governors forum. We have, Amatekun, and I can tell you the security architecture in Oyo State, where we are, has been impacted positively by the formation of the Amatekun Corps, to the extent that they are now the first responders. And then there are several other levels that you see. We have Operation Bust, which is a formation. So at the state level, there are initiatives that state governors are taking to. But when you have a politically articulated agenda that is not addressed by the federal government, then you are going to be having a problem, such as we have in the Southeast, because it's a political agenda for secession in the absence of addressing the grievances of those people. So maybe to that extent, there are some political underlining in all those, agitations. But there will be people who would do things irresponsibly. But you cannot generalize and say the political class generally, there are various aspects of weaknesses in our political and electioneering process, which we may discuss. But to accuse the general political class of fueling insecurity, that would be like somebody putting a fire on his roof and hoping that you'll be able to sleep.
All right, Prof, we'll come down to the issue of the governors, if they've done enough, in spite of all the powers they have. Let me quickly introduce one of the panelists joining us this morning. We have Barrister Yomi Ogunlola joining us. Good morning, Barrister.
Yeah. Yes, good morning, Nigeria, and the studio. Let me especially welcome Professor Oyelowo Oyewo You have brought a very, very big man into the studio this morning, a very special man. Professor Oyewo was my supervisor. He supervised my seminar papers when I was working for my PhD. And he's been a wonderful brother, a highly respected professional, and one that is setting the standard in the Ministry of Justice. But that is not to say that we let him go free this morning. We are going to battle him.
You're welcome.
You're most welcome, Prof.
Thank you.
Now, Prof, self-preservation is the first law of nature.
Yeah.
And the welfare of state, the greatest law. Recently, a chief of army staff admonished Nigerians to defend themselves against insurgents. Some governors have equally advised their citizens to carry arms in their own defense. Now, my question is this. Does this accord with the Constitution? If it doesn't, is the call not a confirmation of the failure of governance as alleged in some quarters?
Well, the first answer to the call to arms is to say that both in terms of our Constitution, we don't have the right to bear arms in our Constitution. Indeed, there is the Firearms Act that regulates what you can have as a citizen. And that's why I'm talking from the experience that we've had in Oyo State. When the insurgency, the insecurity became alarming, that each state, apart from the Southwest Governors Forum, the state government under the leadership of Governor Seyi Makinde unfolded some strategy to combat. So we started working with the security, because security is a combination that you cannot depend on the state alone. So we discovered that, look, state actors have limitation. Take the police. Most of the police that are brought are from outside the state. So they don't know the terrain. You know, Lekuro and all that. Even when they pronounce it, you laugh because they are not, So, one, you need to indigenize your security architecture. So, Amotekun, we recruited people who are from the domain. Then, that not being enough, we looked at state actors, hunters, and other people, Odua, OPC, and all the other people. So you collaborate. And those people have put out themselves in facing combat, even though not formally recognized. So we start to be ingenious in looking at what is the interpretation that we can give to the Constitution that enables us to do what we can do to make our people safe. So now it is very unfair to ask a citizen to go and bear arms against bandits who have AK-47 and all that. And we found, justification to now write to the federal government for the weaponization of Amatekun. Because when we had the Abolongo prison break, Amatekun were the first responders. They went there with Shakabula. Unfortunately, those people came with AK-47. So we lost some of our men in that combat. So it became very obvious. And as I speak, I can tell you we've made an official request for a process of what we call cooperative security arrangement that will be a blend between the federal government and the state government to arm the Amatekun. We can have the federal agencies supervise that. Already we are having some collaboration in Operation Bust. Amatekun is involved and all that. And they, so this ingenuity is being done in our own state. There are some other states where people are doing that. You find out when we discovered that the security on the express was so high, what happened was that through the initiative of the governors, and of course our governor being in the lead, we have joint Oyo Ogun security, team that patrols, and you see that the thing went down. When that was not enough, we extended it to Lagos State. So you find out that between Lagos to Oyo now, because the truth of the matter is that most of the express route is in Ogun State. But the bit that is in Oyo State was also having that. So everybody now joined together. And what we have done is the security, they've combed, and then we have agro rangers. We have the people that, are in the forest who give you intelligence. So the thing about security is that you have to up your game. In fact, we found out that kidnappers are networked. The kidnappers that come to Oyo State are not from Oyo State. Some of them are from Taraba State. Some of them are from. But what they do is that they synergize with local Okada riders or some people who are selling to inform them that this person's vehicle broke down. So they call them. There's a broken down vehicle here. So that's why we tell people once there's a broken down vehicle, there are security numbers to call, so that at least they can be, and then of course Operation Boss and Amotekun, they are on those places. So I think the bottom line is one should try and see how he can evade, leave the vehicle and save his life.
Now, Prof. I understand, the position of particularly the state government relative to the insecurity situation that we find ourselves. And you alluded to a request, that has been made, on behalf of the Oyo State government.
In fact, it's not only Oyo State. I can tell you, Ondo State government too
has also done the same thing.
Yes.
Why is there a problem? Because a couple of days ago, the president tried to allay the fears of Nigerians, saying that before his term expires, that he would have solved the insecurity problem in Nigeria. This was a follow-up to what happened in Edo. And in that speech, he said there was going to be collaboration with the locals in stemming the tide of insecurity. So why do we have a problem? If he is going to use the locals, in what area or areas is he thinking of engaging them when the issue of arming the security network is yet unresolved? Is he expecting the locals to fight the insurgents with cutlasses, machetes, and all whatnot?
No, I think what he was alluding to is the brainchild of the police. The IGP, they came up with the idea of what they call community policing. But we have gone beyond that, because the community policing plan they came with still was deficient in the aspect of funding and, like you said, provision of arms and ammunition. So we felt that, look, this is not going to work if it is still going to be something based on police that have not worked. So maybe that's what is alluding to. I'm not part of the government, of the federal government, so I can only guess, like you, what the federal government, through the president, is saying. But I know some actions that have been taken at the federal level. For instance, this past week, the Attorney General of the Federation finally summoned all the attorneys general to a meeting, because we found out that, look, even though in our constitutional architecture for dispute resolution, the formal procedure for dispute resolution is through the courts, and the courts takes time. So if there's a dispute between federal and state government, you take it to court, and the adjournment, then you go to the state high court, you go to court of appeal, you go to whether state or federal, then you get to Supreme Court, then Supreme Court. So it takes time. So we discovered that, look, if as law officers we have issues, we can iron it out. So there is a political process embedded in the Constitution that we don't even trigger. So for the first time in 8 years, we met, and all these agitations, including our request to the president, was tabled at the meeting. And we formed committees to see that these things are brought to, but time is very short. Because if this thing had been done from the inception of the regime, there will have been avenue for us to take our, instead of we are having dispute on VAT, we go to court. we want to assert our right as a state, we go to court. And when you go to court, once the thing is sub judice, you have to wait. So, as a matter of fact, if the national government, through the pronouncement of the president, is serious, because talk is cheap, they must put money where your mouth is, and we are not seeing it. The only good thing I can tell you is that there are some states that are copying the model that we are practicing in the Southwest, particularly in Oyo State. I've had requests from other states now that I should forward the law of Oyo State on Amotekun to them, so that, and you can see there are even states in the north, they call it Amotekun of their states. So we have to take initiatives that will protect the life and property of our people. And that's what we are doing in Oyo State.
All right, Prof, we'll have to pay some commercial bills. But before we do that, if you're listening to us right about now, you can also join us on our social media platforms. That's on Facebook, 32FM 949 Ibadan. And on YouTube, 32FM 949 Ibadan as well. For you to drop your comment, we still have Professor Oyelowo Oyewo, who is the Attorney General of Oyo State. We'll pay those bills and we'll be right back.
FM 94.9.
I know say everybody getting time, I don't go lose faith. As I dey hustle every day, I know they look face. Cause I know say one day I go make up. Yes, I know say one day I go blow. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. Yeah, yeah. Cause I know say one day I go make up. Yes, I know say one day I go blow. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. Yeah, yeah. Cause I know say one day I go make up.
Ẹ̀gbọ́n ìjàre ìmọ̀lẹ́yìn lọ ìjàre àti kóńgó kéré kalẹ̀ ọ̀dẹ̀ ní gbọ́ àfẹ́dẹ́ lọ́ọ̀mì ó dàgẹ́ gbogbo owó ẹ̀ ló pé pérépéré.
Ti olúwa nílẹ̀ àti ẹkún rẹ̀.
Ayé àti àwọn tó mọ̀ tán rẹ̀.
Ẹlẹ́wọ̀n gbà.
Kò lè má rí bẹ́ẹ̀. Onírúurú talẹ̀talẹ̀ ló ń bẹ nílẹ̀ yìí ṣùgbọ́n àrà ọ̀tọ̀ ni Danabits Homes and Properties torí wọ́n fi ní lọ́kàn balẹ̀ àwọn tó ti bá wọn dòwò pọ̀ tẹ́lẹ̀ rí ni wọ́n ti lè sọ àǹfààní tó ń bẹ lọ́dọ̀ wọn àwọn ni wọ́n ń ta ilẹ̀ Victory Estate phase 1 àti phase 2 alábàtà mọ́níyà tí ò kọjá ìṣẹ́jú mẹ́ta sí railway terminal ìfà ńlá tó ni Treasure Estate tó wà ní Ìdó-Lẹ́bàá University wọ́n ń gbèrò ẹ̀ Favour Estate náà wà ní Mòwe tí ò sì kọjá agbára má sọ ọmọ ní ti Joyce Cotton Gardens tó wà níwájú Bethel American International School Ìrókò lójú ọ̀nà Ìbàdàn sílùú Ọ̀yọ́ 550,000 naira péré ni àti bẹ̀rẹ̀ iṣẹ́ lórí àwọn ilẹ̀ yìí ìrọ̀rùn ló bá dé torí owó wọn kò gara bọ́rọ̀ èèyàn bá wá ní jásí irú ti bàbá Ìjẹ̀ṣà eré tètè lọ sí ọ́fíìsì wọn ní Prime Time Plaza ọba Alẹ́ṣinlọ́yẹ́ phase 2 lẹ́bàá Bidin petrol station lálẹ́ṣinlọ́yẹ́ Ìbàdàn sanwó kó gbalẹ̀ lójú ọgán ọ̀fẹ́ sì ní corner piece lọ́dọ̀ wọn àyè san díẹ̀díẹ̀ tún wà níbẹ̀ pẹ̀lú àlàyé ẹ ṣáà ti pè wọ́n sórí 090-477-97352 tàbí 081-884-18137 Danabits Homes and Properties àwọn ni wọ́n sọ ilé kíkọ́ dìrọ̀rùn fọmọ aráyé.
lórí ètò òṣèlú ẹ pàdé Peter Ọlásùpọ̀ Captain P2 pẹ̀lú àwọn ọ̀jìnì olóṣèlú tí ó máa gbà lálejò láti mọ ibi tí nǹkan dé dúró lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí àti ní ìpínlẹ̀ wa lórí ètò òṣèlú nílẹ̀ yìí kó ipa tirẹ̀ nípa gbígbọ́ ìkànnì 32FM 94.9 ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ajé Monday láago 11 sí 12 ọ̀sán ètò òṣèlú àjọ máa gbọ́ ni.
bá a ṣe láwọn akọ́ṣẹ́mọṣẹ́ dókítà tíṣẹ́yé bẹ́ẹ̀ náà la láwọn àwòrán àṣà mẹkáníìkì GMF Auto Services Limited bóyá ẹ̀ tí ìdébẹ̀ wò ní ọ̀jẹ̀ ẹ̀ mọ̀ pọ́nmọ́nàmọ́ pa àwọn erin lákàtàbù irinṣẹ́ ni ó diagnose mọ́tò yín kẹ́sẹ́ bí wọ́n ti máa fẹnu fapò sórí carburetor wait and get ni kò ní lọ kábọ̀ tí machine bá ti ń discover problem láàmú fix ẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ kan torí gbogbo original spare part ń bẹ́ẹ̀ lẹ̀ bíbà àwọn aláràlù àtàwọn aláràtúntà gan tó wá ń kó lọ́pọ̀ yanturu ṣe rí pé gbogbo ń tẹ́ fẹ́ lójú kan ló wà.
Yes, so our services, the consultancy, diagnosis, key programming, transmission repair, maintenance, spare part sales, plus plenty odonge things. GMF Auto Services Limited. Day for number 3, Oni Lane, beside White House Hotel, behind Boys High School, Labawo, Ogunpa, Ibadan. Ẹ kọ́ pé wọ́n lórí aago náà kẹ́ ẹ mọ bó ṣe wà sí 0806-634-8917 0806-634-8917 tó o bá fẹ́ kẹ́mi ọkọ̀ rí ogun GMF ni ó yàn láàyò.
jẹ́ kí ìmọ́lẹ̀ kí ó wà ní Olúwa wí. Ìmọ́lẹ̀ ti wá dé báyìí nípasẹ̀ iléeṣẹ́ Greater Light Power Limited. Aṣíwájú iléeṣẹ́ tó mójúlẹ́jà solar installation dọ́ba. Èrò pọ̀ lẹ́nu iṣẹ́ solar lóòótọ́, àmọ́ ká ṣe solar kó mọ́lẹ̀ rokoṣo láìsí ìdákúrekú. Ọ̀gá ni iléeṣẹ́ Greater Light Power Limited. Capacity tẹ́ bá ń fẹ́ bó ti wù kó pọ̀ tó. Greater Light Limited wà bí ẹ̀wà fún yín. Hybrid of solar and wind ló mú wọn yàtọ̀ gédégbé. Bí wọ́n ṣe ń ṣe installation ni wọ́n ṣe repairs pẹ̀lú oríṣiríṣi solar panels tó fi mọ́ wind turbine, inverters pẹ̀lú batteries lóríṣiríṣi. Bá a ṣe ń tà là ń ṣe installations fún ilégbèé, ilé-iṣẹ́, ilé ìtura, gbọ̀ngàn ayẹyẹ àti bẹ́ẹ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ. Ìgbàkúùgbà àti ibikíbi tí ẹ bá ń fẹ́ solar installation sí, tààrà ni ẹ máa bọ̀ wá sí Greater Light Power Limited. A wà ní number 2 Òjó Ìbàdàn Avenue, Old Bodija, Ìbàdàn. Telephone 080-5852-1994 or 081-7759-5000. Website www.greaterlightpowerlimited.com. Greater Light Power Limited, bringing you a brighter life.
You're listening to 32 FM 94.9.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still on to the podium, 32 FM 94.9. And of course, we still have Professor Oyelowo Oyewa with us in the studios this morning, the Attorney General of Oyo State and Minister of Justice, a consultant of administrative and constitutional law. And of course, we're still looking at security concerns and the elections. And of course, you can follow us on our Facebook page right about now. It's been streamed live. You can drop your questions if you have any, your contributions on this particular issue. And if you have questions for our guest this morning, you can also do the same. All right, Barrister Gunola, I thought you also have some questions before moving.
This question can be said to be anything but cordial, at least in the past, because I know you are going to tell me what you have been doing in that respect. Now, between these sister organizations.
Okay, thank you very much. I think initially when Amateku was floated as an idea, there was the general hostility against the implementation of that idea by the federal police. And of course, we were able to have a meeting finally in Lagos between the Southwest governors and the IGP. I remember at that time, we were able to sufficiently convince, under the leadership of the chairman of the Southwest Governors Forum, Arakunrin Akeredolu, and it became very clear that there was nothing unconstitutional about the setting up of Amateku. So you can see that against the background of that hostility, when Amateku came into existence, there was not going to be that much cooperation, so to speak, between the police and Amateku. Indeed, when we were training the first set of people, the police were not part of those that trained them. And when Amateku came into existence, like you said, there was hostility because the police procedure and the Amateku procedure were clashing. But I believe nothing succeeds like success. Success has many relations. So when it became very obvious to the police and all the other security agencies that the Amateku was not set up as a competitor against policing in the state, which constitutionally is the primary responsibility of the police. Amateku was set up as a complementary Southwest security network to complement the deficiencies of the police. There are some places that the police cannot enter that Amateku can, particularly with the cooperation of non-state actors like the Olodes in the forest. In fact, there was a term they were used for non-state actors. They were calling them Irumale. But the police don't have such people. So more and more, when Amateku Amateku's intervention started yielding result and improving the statistics that they had. In fact, the statistics we had in this December, where crime had gone down so much that the Christmas apprehension that we had in the state, the statistics just show that, look, Amateku is succeeding. So bottom line of it is that the narrative has changed. There's a lot of cooperation between the sister agencies, like you call them, because the police, they don't have the for choice of word, they don't have the financial muscle to deal with security. So bottom line, if the state provides Amateku in terms of manpower, in terms of equipment, in terms of, synergy, everybody sees that it's a win-win situation.
All right, Prof, I don't want us to lose the flavor for what we're discussing. We're looking at security concerns and, of course, the election itself. Now, I will take you back to Ernest Shonekan. And, of course, I'll take you back to the interim government again. Now, when INEC came up to say, through another person who is a major stakeholder in INEC, not Mahmoud Yakubu this time around, saying that there could be postponements, although Mahmoud said that will not happen. But now there are instances of some areas that people would not want to go out and vote in. And now they've already registered to vote in those areas. And if now, because of the security challenges, these areas are not allowed to vote, and they make up part of the huge percentage of the 25% stake. Now, if elections are cancelled in all these areas, meaning that overall election results will be affected, and meaning declaration may be very difficult. Now, we'll go back to the first interim government Nigeria has ever had, which is Shonekan, of course, toppled by Abacha then. Now, do you see a crisis in this regard, if you have to look into the future, that this could happen again?
I don't think the scenarios are the same. Ernest Shonekan was a military, misadventure.
But there was an election.
Yeah, there was an election that was annulled. So bottom line of it is that it was a transition that was still bad. It was a transition from a military to a constitutional, but they didn't allow that to happen. Now we have a constitutional government in place. What the Constitution provides for, and the Electoral Acts can accommodate those instances. So, for instance, if you do a general election and you discover in the course of it, when they are doing the general election, the security will be spread across all the areas where the elections are taking place. We've had that before. Then when they find out that some areas are security challenges, they will postpone the elections a week, by which time security will be mobilized from areas where elections have been concluded to those areas. So you saw, for instance, when they were going to hold election in Edo State, in Anambra State, the sheer number, you think it was a war zone. And that was to give the people the assurance that come out and vote and you'll be safe. And once that place is saturated with those armed forces, the insurgents normally go into hiding.
Now, can the police deal with this? Because there is a precedent. There was a particular case, I think it was Fayoshe's case then, while he was trying to come as a governor of Ekiti State. Then there were instances of the military being deployed, and the likes of Gbajabiamila, I could still remember, went to court and got an interim injunction saying that the army doesn't have any business in the election process in terms of security. Now, we're talking about shortfalls in the numbers of policing.
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
Now, how then do we deal with this? When we have personal
you see, if you have challenges, you just don't raise up your hand and give up. You must think through the process within the powers conferred on you. Even with that scenario, eventually, it was still the police. There are areas where the army may stay in order to see that people who have
enough to do that.
That's what I've said, that they may not be enough to do that when we have the general election. But what they do is that those areas of insecurity will be, postponed either to the following Saturday, and then they will not, amass all the forces from those areas where the elections have been concluded and put them there. And that's what they've been doing. And they will still do that during this election. There are some the elections that are even without security, they say they are inconclusive. And then they come back again. So the process of INEC conducting election is a constitutional responsibility. The process of providing security is a constitutional responsibility placed on the police and the security forces. So if there is going to be an intelligence information that says that there should not be election, it should come from the security apparatus, not from somebody.
Have they not been compromised in this instance? Because there are allegations of compromise of even the security sector.
You see, the challenge we have about compromise, you have to know that there are some people, there are various interests, and people will fly a kite, people will say things. There are interests that are competing, even on the social media. So bottom line of it is that let's face the reality of what can be done and what cannot be done. Our police is not the kind of police that we can say can deal with insecurity absolutely. So bottom line of it is that within the resources that is given to them, they will do their best. And from experience, their best may not be perfect, but it will be sufficient for them to allow INEC to conduct its duty, conduct its elections. You know, that's why we've been agitating for the reform of INEC too.
Prof,
you know?
Please let me come in here.
Yeah.
Because my question is also related to what the anchor is asking. Now, for our nascent democracy to grow and develop, as rational human beings, especially with power of introspection, that we identify those things militating the growth, development, and evolution of our democracy.
Yeah.
And with, of course, the power to resolve same. Now, some Nigerians believe it is a waste of time conducting elections when the state is yet to resolve nagging issues. Say, for instance, the issue of self-determination. I want to ask you, what in your view is militating the growth, the development, and the evolution of this nascent democracy?
That's a very big question. But simply put, you see, when you talk about democracy, there are some undergirding principle for democracy. For instance, you can't talk about democracy without Democrats. So we don't have Democrats in Nigeria. When you talk about democratic processes that produces democratic leader, if you take example of our political parties, I mean, you ask yourself the question: did the political parties produce democratic leaders that we can vote for? That's why there's even apathy. In fact, if you take any one of the candidates, there are so many, and we are not even dealing with the role of money in politics. So we are still dealing with politics of money bags. If 5 governors in a political party can stand up against the nominee of the party and agitate till now, that tells you that there are problems that needs to be addressed. And people are not giving up. In fact, you have to salute the courage of those governors against the tide of the leadership of their political party to say there's something wrong. We need to address it before we go into election. And that addresses the issue of, should we address things before we go to election, or we go to election and come back and address it? And the truth of the matter is that after election, people don't address those issues. Now, when you also talk about there are some things that we need to do about ourselves, even us as the electorate. How many times have we chosen that we can beat our chest and say the president is a product of our election? You know, so there are fundamental issues. However, Rome was not built in a day. Anybody that have read the history of all the big, we are making a mistake. We are running a race and comparing ourselves to people who have arrived when we haven't started. So we are running and thinking, because we borrowed this constitution from America, so it operates like if America didn't get there one day. We are not addressing the fundamentals. And I think those are some of, we are still dealing in primordial, governance of interest, religion, ethnicity, and those are counter to constitutionalism, to democratic governance, and let's even take about value. In democratic governance, you talk about the value addition of democracy, which is good governance. The good governance is supposed to produce improvement in the quality of life of people. So if we talk in terms of the amount of money that goes into government and what is delivered, what is the value addition? So you find a situation where the governor of central bank wants to run for office and at the same time remain the governor of central bank. Those are anomalies that should not happen in a political setting. You make up your mind. If you are going for governor of central bank, you are governor of central bank. The moment you step and say you want to, you must resign and leave that position. So there are so many anomalies. And then when you even look at the kind of leadership that we have, without wanting to, cast any aspersion on anybody, talk from 1999 till now, the quality of leadership have diminished. And with all due respect to General Buhari, he is totally out of it, because it's like if his leadership is an agenda that does not cover the whole of the Nigeria. It's an agenda that has favored one set of people over the other. And that's what is leading to the agitation in PDP that, look, we can't continue like this. So when you look at our democracy, yes, it's battered and all that, but you ask yourself, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. So what is the alternative? Do we go into an autocratic, benevolent democracy? Or do we go to a monarchical? Or we go to an elder? So how do we even choose? Those are the things that we need to address. So we must continue to address them. Some people have what you call piecemeal approach of reform. So you take it one by one day at a time. And one day you just wake up and see that, you painted the front of your house this year. The next year you paint the back. Then in a couple of years, the whole house have been painted, So that may be incremental, improvement in the summit. But there are so many existential challenges that does not give patience for incremental, democracy. So we need to get to a point where we can address them. But unfortunately, look at the firmament. Has there been any political debate since we had these primaries that somebody is talking about issue of restructuring, for instance, or you're talking about poverty, or you're talking about governance, or you're talking about development, or you're talking about recreation? So it's like each one of the political leaders are talking garbage to us, dancing and playing music and yahoo. How many percentage of Nigerians are yahoo? So bottom line of it is that it's a season of awada and at the end of the day, that is not the kind of politicking that will get us there. But one way or the other, we'll continue to move on because we have to realize that the life of a nation is longer than the life of each generation of people that live in that nation. Because the nation is a relationship between those who have gone, those who are present, and those who are yet to be born.
All right, Prof, I wanted us to say...
Let me crave your indulgence, because we cannot allow the number one lawyer in Oyo State to come into the studio.
Sorry, barrister.
No, wait. Come into the studio and not answer a question relating to his jurisdiction. So please let me crave your indulgence.
Okay.
Now, Prof, a lot of people are complaining about the judiciary. Very recently, most of the courts in Nigeria embraced a new rules of court for the expeditious hearing of cases. But one finds that in practice, it appears the system of old just refuses to go away. That it is still the same system that we operated, where cases linger in courts for years, rather than the expeditious approach, that the new rules preach. Then secondly, in the area of criminal prosecution, the delays are also part of what is responsible for the congestion of our prisons. Thank God that our great father, the chief judge of the state, just before bowing out into retirement, had a visit to many of the prisons and did justice to some of the cases there. I want to ask you, has the judiciary, which is supposed to be the window through which we see our democracy, has it been responsive and responsible to its duties?
Well, by and large, the judiciary in Nigeria has a pass mark. But a judiciary does not exist in vacuum. It exists within the context of its, environment. So we have challenges that Nigeria has spilling over to the judiciary. Truly, there are reforms that are being proposed for the judiciary. Even in Oyo State, some of those reforms are not easy to carry through. You have to carry people along. One of the first reform we targeted when we came is the procedure for appointment of judges. And we know the hue and cry that has gone through it. The Judicial Service Commission has been resolute and saying that, look, these reforms, we must go through them. And thankfully, we are seeing the fruits of them in the quality of the appointment of judges. Then when it comes to financial autonomy, Oyo State, based on the federal something, has passed the financial autonomy for state. But it's one thing to pass the financial autonomy. It's another thing to see the operationalization of it. With respect to criminal justice administration, we have the administration of criminal justice law. In fact, it has been in existence for quite some time now. So we need to look at it. There are some things that, we believe we have oversighted, which are necessary for a thing as simple as the interrogation room. The Administration of Criminal Administration of Criminal Justice Act and Law makes great standards, but those standards need investment. So you need to have video recording. You need to have solar-powered police stations. We have not been able to get there. Then when it comes to judges, the judges are human beings. They can only take so many cases. So we are trying to bring technology to bear. But you see, technology is as robust as who purchases it. So if you go and purchase technology on the basis of man, no man, a lot of technology like that don't last. So we have to get a robust technology that will stand the test of time. And these things, they cost money, they cost, and then even in terms of infrastructure, you can see the government of Oyo State made specific provision for infrastructural development of the judiciary.
All right, we have to pick some calls now.
Even on that,
Sorry,
just before we take the call.
Okay.
Because I was wondering,
Let's take
the calls. Hello, good morning, please. Yeah. Yes, please. What's the name and where are you calling us from? Hello, good morning to you.
Sir.
Yes, please. What's the name and where are you calling us from? All right, please go ahead.
What do you say?
All right, the numbers to call if you have to call into the program this morning. The numbers are 070-550-949 or you could call 080-970-949 for you to ask your questions. And of course, the program is still The Podium, coming to you from 32 FM 94.9. And of course, we still have Professor Oyelowo with us in the studios this morning. I was actually going to the instances of the security votes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering, because it's always like it's the federal structure that needs to do all of this. Then you talked about the federal structure of our constitution. And that's why I asked that time, are we really operating a federal structure itself? Now, if the governors are not disclosing, for instance, how much they get for security votes, then how do we attend to all of these issues?
Well, one thing you have to understand, when it comes to security votes, there is no money that is spent without being budgeted. So how much is allocated to security votes is public information, is in the budget. Now, the question is, what is it spent on? And this is where I believe the states have not done justice to themselves, because the people believe that it's mystified, or, if you take the amount of money that they spend on each police station, on each security formation and all that, it adds up. And then the EFCC also follows through, by wanting to know how your security vote is being spent. So we have had times when we have gone to EFCC. Okay, what did you do with this? What did you do with that? So with that going on, I believe we have to give credit that these security votes are being spent on so many things that relates to security.
Why is there no disclosure? We can't say for certain this is the amount of money or your state, for instance, is receiving as security votes, and giving room for speculations most times.
Bottom line of it is that once you budget, it's after a budget cycle that you can say this is how much because budget is an assumptomatic presentation of revenue that may not happen. So at the end of the day, the Auditor General's office can give account of how much was spent, and the records are there. But at the time when these things are being done, it's in response to various security issues. And security issues are not things that all the time you put in the public domain, because you are dealing with people who, when they have that information, can plan counter, insecurity against your security architecture.
All right, the numbers again to call before Prof leaves the studio this morning. The numbers are 070-550-949, or you could call 080-977-949. The numbers again are 070-550-949, and of course 080-977-949. We're also live on Facebook. You could also follow us and drop your questions. There is 32 FM 949 Ibadan. And of course on YouTube. All right, if we put all of this together, what aspect do you think we got wrong when it comes to instances of sharing responsibility under a federal structure itself, looking at our electioneering process? Because right from when we got back to the 1999 elections itself, and of course we had an Obasanjo. Now, they've always been a little bit of the violence, in spite of the fact that the 1999 looks more or less like something that was arranged. But afterwards, you've seen pockets of crisis. Now, it's been there as part of our electoral process. Now, how can we arrange the federal structure in such a way that security is well dealt with at the end of the day?
Well, I believe the issue of security calls for the change and a revamp or reform of our security architecture.
Prof, let's see if we could pull through with this. Hello, good morning, please. Hello, good morning to you. Hello, good morning. Do we have a caller here? All right, Prof, you could go ahead.
Yeah, when you look at the security architecture, it's colonial. There's been no injection of new ideas, and then the implementation of it also has been corrupted. A situation where you just have all the security apparatus headed by somebody from the same ethnic group, it doesn't augur well for, So the security architecture, the operation of it, all of it has been compromised. Then from a federal point of view, I believe it's time for us to look at having either regional or zonal or some form of collaboration at the zonal level that allow the states to have Amatekun, weaponized. And from my experience, when they are weaponized, it doesn't mean that they are going to be subject to abuse. Even the police, as it it takes instruction from the federal government.
Are we just talking about Amotekun alone? We have the ISBA.
Okay, the ISBA, they will tell you is for religious, whatever, but they use it for policing. So bottom line of it is that state initiative must be accommodated, regulated, supervised, sanctioned where necessary, and improved upon. Policing from the federal government at the central level, you have problem in Ibadan. The CP has to wait for instruction from Abuja. It doesn't work. So there must be decentralization of the police. Then there needs to be decentralization. One aspect that we don't articulate is what the federal the Constitution has not given to us, me and you as individuals. What we have in the 1999 Constitution is what we have had in the 1963 Constitution, 1960 Constitution, with respect to the right of the citizens. The areas that the 1979 Constitution brought in as social and economic rights are put in Chapter 2, which are not justiciable. We advocate for the incremental justiciability of those non-justiciable provisions. So somebody sits in Abuja, give a license, worth of solid mineral, and we don't benefit from it. So the right of the citizens must be improved upon.
Good morning.
And then we must democratize the process for elections to have independent candidates.
All right. Sorry, Prof, for cutting you there.
Yes.
Hello, good morning. Yes, please. Can we have your name and where you're calling us from?
This is Dad calling from LA.
All right, please.
I want to salute the Prof, the Prince, and you, the moderator. While you people are talking about the problems confronting this country, the three of you mentioned that some institutions are working. But Prince, Mela put something across the region. You are how can we know what justice is getting from the security vote? And honestly speaking, the Prof, you really touched that section. Why? It's very time we let everybody, because we get there only. I don't need to consult the entire budget before what else to talk from federal government and security vote. That's my observation. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for calling in. And of course, we have to pay more bills this morning. We'll take this break and we'll be right back.
32 FM 94.9.
I know say everybody getting time, I don't go lose faith. As I dey hustle every day, I know they look face. Cause I know say one day I go make her. Yes, I know say one day I go blow. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. Yeah. Cause I know say one day I go make her. Yes, I know say one day I go blow. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. We move, we move, we move, we move, we move. Yeah. Cause I know say one day I go make her.
Láti ìlọ Mẹ́kà lálọ́dé, you fit fly ní kẹjá lọ.
Asalaamu alaikum gbogbo Mùsùlùmí. Ilẹ̀kùn Hajj 2023 ti ṣí sílẹ̀. Fún gbogbo ẹni tó fẹ́ bá wa ṣe ìrìn àjò lọ́dún yìí. Ilé-iṣẹ́ alálùbáríkà you fit fly ní pé gbogbo wa o. Hajj ìtọ́dún ní yàtọ̀ kọjá àtàtẹ̀yìnwá. Ṣé ti wá mọ̀ pé àtètè sùn ní àtètè jí? Ọ̀pọ̀ ti ń fọ́ kọ́lẹ̀ nílé-iṣẹ́ you fit fly. Ẹ̀yin náà tètè máa bọ̀ wá fọ́ kọ́lẹ̀ fún Hajj 2023 tí ó wáyé láàrin ọjọ́ kẹẹ̀ẹ́dógún oṣù kẹfà sọ́jọ́ keje oṣù keje ọdún 2023 pẹ̀lú ọ̀pọ̀ ètò tó mú ìgbádùn rẹpẹtẹ dání. Ilégbé ìrọ̀rùn tí ò jìnnà sí haram àti mọ́ṣáláṣí ànábì Mádínà. Síyárà ọ̀fẹ́ lójoojúmọ́. Oúnjẹ àjẹdọ́wẹ́kẹ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀mẹ́ta lójúmọ́. Tó fi mọ́ ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ètò tí ó mú ká ẹ ṣe àṣepé hajj tọdún ní. A jẹ́ pé a máa ń fa àkókò ṣòfò mọ́. Ẹ wá darapọ̀ mọ́ àwọn hujjaj lọ́fíìsì you fit fly tó wà ní Success House 7 Up Road Olúyọ̀lé Main Estate Ring Road Ìbàdàn. Tàbí kẹ́ ẹ pè 0703 711 7801. Hajj 2023 pẹ̀lú you fit fly. Inshallah àjọ lọ ni.
Nílé iṣẹ́ Danabis Homes and Property bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ti ń sanwó tán láàmú fún yín lẹ̀ ká lọ kábọ̀ kan ò sí. Bẹ́ẹ̀ bá bá wa dòwò pọ̀ kò sí all god lórí ọ̀rọ̀ tiwa. Àtúntiwa jẹ́ state tuntun ọ̀ṣàrà. Joyce Court and Garden lápẹ́. Kò jìnnà rárá sí Kọ́ládà yìí sí yunifásitì. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ló tún dojú kọ Bethel American International School. Fìdítì lójú ọ̀nà Ìbàdàn sílùú Ọ̀yọ́. 550,000 naira là ń ta plọ̀tì. Favour estate wa náà tó ń bẹ ní Mòwe 1.2 million naira ní plọ̀tì kan. Victory Estate phase 1 tó ń bẹ ní Alábàtà Mọ́níyà Ìbàdàn 5-minute drive sí ní railway terminal 800,000 naira ní plọ̀tì kan. Victory Estate phase 2 850,000 naira ní plọ̀tì kan o. Treasure Estate tó ń bẹ ní Ìdó 650,000 naira ní plọ̀tì kan. Sanwó ẹ̀ tán kó o gbalẹ̀ ní nílé iṣẹ́ wa. Àǹfààní àti san díẹ̀díẹ̀ wà ní ilé iṣẹ́ Danabis Homes and Property. A wà ní Primetime Plaza Ọba Alẹ́ṣinlọ́yẹ̀ phase 2 lẹ́gbẹ̀ẹ́ Bìdín petrol station Alẹ́ṣinlọ́yẹ̀ Ìbàdàn 0904 779 7352 0818 841 8137.
Nǹkan kọ̀kọ̀ má ṣe é lo oògùn mámọ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ àṣírí gbogbo ní ó dèrò gbangba gbogbo mọ́jà gbọ́ tí tàbùkù ẹni bó bá ta sétí kejì kẹta ló yẹ kẹ́dà ó jìnnà sí kí wàá lóun tẹ̀yìn ṣe pamọ́ tẹ́nìkan ò mọ̀ àmọ́ tọkàn yín ò fúyẹ́ torí pé ẹ ò tí ì sọ jáde
ètò nǹkan kọ̀kọ̀ ní kẹ́ ẹ darapọ̀ mọ́. Gbogbo nǹkan kọ̀kọ̀ tó ti dàrú mọ́ra ìsọnù ẹ̀kú fún yín lọ́jọ́ tó pẹ́. Orí nǹkan kọ̀kọ̀ lẹ́ ò tún túlẹ̀ fáráyé tí wọ́n kọ́gbọ́n tára àtẹ̀mí tiyín náà ó sì kọ́fẹ́. Aago 10 alẹ́ Sátidé lẹ́tò pẹ̀lú Láyàn Àṣàmú ọmọ Akínbọ́lá ní ìkànnì ìfẹ́yín ẹ̀ 32 FM 94.9. Bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ṣe ń pè wọlé láì dákọ yín lára yóò sì máa kọ́gbọ́n lára nǹkan kọ̀kọ̀ tẹ́ ẹ bá tú síta. Alẹ́ Sátidé ọ̀sẹ̀ yìí láago 10:15. Nǹkan kọ̀kọ̀ kò ṣeé má gbọ́ ètò.
Ọlọ́run tèmi tọ́pẹ́ ẹ̀jẹ̀ Jésù. Ìwọ nìkan ló lè ṣe o. Fàánú yanjú ọ̀rọ̀ mi.
Òwúrọ̀ àánú, òwúrọ̀ àánú, òwúrọ̀ àánú. Ìmísí Ọlọ́run nínú ayé ìránṣẹ́ rẹ̀. Prophet Tèmítọ́pẹ́ ẹ̀jẹ̀ Jésù. Ó ní ètò tuntun tí ó máa kalẹ̀ sí 32 FM 94.9 ní déédéé aago 4:00 òwúrọ̀ lójoojúmọ́. Ó yá ẹ yí rédíò yín sí 32 FM 94.9. Kẹgbà agbára ẹ̀mí mímọ́ láti ẹnu ìránṣẹ́ rẹ̀. Prophet Tèmítọ́pẹ́ ẹ̀jẹ̀ Jésù ti ìjọ New Image International tó wà ní jẹ́jẹ́ àrọ́kọ́tọ̀ opposite Ablat Pure Water Apẹtẹ Ìbàdàn. Òwúrọ̀ àánú 32 FM 94.9. Aago 4:00 òwúrọ̀ sáago 5 ni o. Gbọ́ kó o sì gba ìyípadà sí rere lọ́dọ̀ Jésù.
Stay tuned to 32 FM 94.9.
Welcome back. You're still on to 32 FM 94.9. And of course, we still have Professor Oyelowo with us in the studios this morning. And of course, it's the Attorney General of Oyo State and Minister of Justice in the state. Hello, good morning to you. What's the name and where you're calling us from? Hello, good morning. What's the name and where you're calling us from? All right. Once you call into the program, do remember you have to turn down the audio level of your radio set so that we can actually get you clearly. All right, Prof, you've been talking on the issue of security concerns ahead of the February elections. And now, how do we allay the fears of the masses here? Because obviously many people still nurse the fear in spite of the fact that they want to perform their constitutional responsibility of exercising their franchise at this election itself. But how then do we give them the confidence and the trust in the electoral process?
I think before Prof answers that, let me add mine, to that question. Now, recently, there was a troubling report of what appears a political assassination in the state. Secondly, some concerned citizens... Political
assassination of who?
I think there was in the report maybe a PDP member in one of the sub-areas, It was in the news, that he was assassinated. That was in the news. All right, so let me say allegedly so.
Okay.
All right. Now, secondly, some concerned citizens have complained about what they consider the illegal activities of auxiliary and members of the new body in charge of transport, what you call it. Okay. Now, elections are so close. What is your assessment of the security situation in Oyo State? Are you guaranteeing the people of Oyo State that we will have a security, they have their security...
Safe environment.
A safe environment for before, during, and after the elections.
Okay, the first thing to respond is that it's only God that can guarantee security.
Obviously.
Yeah, so let's get that clear. But within the context of Oyo State, to start with the last question, I believe a lot of, reforms and investment have gone into improving. Like I said, the stats, we are following through. The Security Council of Oyo State monitors, and it's a layered security council that involved all the security apparatus at the federal and state level. So we are working in synergy to make sure that people of Oyo State are safe. And then we thank God also for the new Commissioner of Police, Commissioner of Police Williams, who has brought a lot of experience to make the environment and even the impact of policing to be felt with its own very deft approach and timeous response to, insecurity. Then, with respect to the assassination, you haven't given facts to even know what assassination you are referring to. But with respect to auxiliary, I think auxiliary's role as best is that of park manager, which we all have applauded, because before now, we used to have all these thugs and all that control our parks. Oyo State has invested in all those parks. They've taken out all those people who are not supposed to be there. Yes, it's an ongoing activity, but as election comes, you will be having counter accusations from political parties against this person because of his antecedent. But be that as it may, whatever excesses that are brought to the attention of the government will be addressed.
All right, to allay the fears of the masses.
Yes, to allay the fears of the masses. I believe the Constitution primarily makes the guarantee of life and property the duty of states. And when you say states, it's not only the state government, it's also the federal government. Within Oyo State, I believe if you look at the temperature of the state before election, in previous elections and now, you can see that the temperature now is very normal. There's not been skirmishes, talks, and all that. So we guarantee as a government under the leadership of Governor Seyi Makinde that this will continue. The reason why this is also so, which I have to emphasize, is because of the investment that has been made by the administration of Governor Seyi Makinde in infrastructure and all that. One very paradigm-shifting, investment is the light up of your state. Where there is light.
Are we making reference to just your state? Because you're talking about a general election.
Yes, we are talking about general election.
In the holistic aspect of it, Nigerians
we've
want to know.
spoken so much holistically.
Okay.
But you can't talk in the air. We can use your state as an example of what
a reference
point, like a case study. So that if other people, you see, one of the things you have to understand is that the principle of federalism is offering a laboratory for experimentation in each of the states, which, when successful, can be replicated. So that's what federalism is all about. Before, we used to talk about Lagos State. Up to now, Lagos State is a laboratory which we copy. Rivers State. So now we are using Oyo State as a pace setter, where we are really pace setting, and we believe that these things have given our people this idea of from poverty to prosperity. Has brought about every 25th, people are getting, things that makes them to turn away from crime. So more and more people within the state who were idle and all that, even the marketplace, people come. So our own affirmation of what we have promised the people of Oyo State is that there will be security to the extent of what we can provide. But everybody must be conscious, because security is not something external, it's personal too. So if there are dangers, please call the authorities. If there are any alarming development, whether any part of Nigeria, let the authorities know and let them come and intervene. Because if, like we say in Oyo, Pakpa Ofura, Pakpa Juno, Aja Ofura, Ajajin, only ti Ofura, ole ni okolo.
On that note, we must say a big thank you to Professor Oyelowo for your time on the program this morning. It's been a fantastic conversation here. And of course, we'll be looking at security concerns ahead of the 2023 elections. It's 32 FM 94.9. And we must say a big thank you to you, Prof. All right.
Yes, my teacher and my leader. Wonderful having you with us.
Thank you very much
this morning.
Thank you.
All right, on that note, we have to take this break and we'll be back shortly. All right, you're welcome back, and you are still on to 32 FM 94.9. My name is GBOLABO, Female School, and the program is The Podium. And now we have another guest with us in the studios this morning, and he's going to be joining us in more analysis looking at the elections. There are just about 41 days to the presidential and, of course, the National Assembly election here. And many hopes are really very high in terms of their participation at this election itself. And now we want to look at some of the instances that surround this election. And one of the major issues has to do with the NFIU. And the NFIU is saying that there must be a withdrawal limit, especially for political leadership and, of course, civil servant when it comes to public account. And we are also looking at the fact that many Nigerians, some are still contemplating whether to get their PVC, how to go about it. And without a PVC, you cannot participate in this election. We'll have a legal luminary with us in the studios this morning. He's a right activist. We have Barrister Femi Aborishade with us in the studios. It's great to have you here, sir.
Thanks very much for having me.
All right, let's look at, let me start off with the collection of PVCs. And of course, how stringent some people have explained that, the processes are very rigorous for them, having to queue, and some would say the experiences wasn't as difficult. Now, some have said that is a way to actually disenfranchise many Nigerians who want to be part of this electoral process itself in order to manipulate the elections. But those are just insinuations. But from your perspective and from the rights of the people, what should have INEC done to make this much more explicit for individuals to easily, like when you want to get your bank ATM, doesn't take you years. You go there, you apply, and you get it. Within 72 hours is working. Now, why is that so difficult to have it done, especially when it comes to issue of your legal rights that you want to exercise here?
Well, I think you have made a valid point. And that point is that the collection of PVCs ought not to be difficult as it is. People who have registered to vote are entitled to collection of their PVC because without the PVC, they cannot vote, particularly on the basis of the new technology which has now been adopted. And so to make it difficult for people to collect their PVCs is, in my opinion, a kind of deprivation. But we also know that collection of PVCs in itself is also a political exercise. We have seen video clips in certain places where people from certain ethnic groups are allegedly being deprived, or the process is being made difficult for them, in order to disenfranchise them. These are reports which INEC ought to look into. INEC ought to take firm action to prevent disenfranchisement of any Nigerian on any ground, be it religious, ethnic, or whatever. It should not happen. The process ought to be made easy for people to collect their PVCs.
All right, Barrister Ogunlola, you may have one or two questions to ask as well.
You have brought my brother into the studio. I hope you know the caliber of the person you have brought into the studio this morning. He is a leftist to the core, a champion of social equality and egalitarianism, and all the questions about PVCs are not the right ones for him for this morning. I know you have lined up what you have for him and why you brought him in. But I want us to get the very best out of him. With due respect, Lanet Senior, I want to ask you, there are agitations right, left, and center, self-determination, and some other grievances here and there. What is your perspective on this election, especially when these burning issues remain unresolved by the government?
Can you be more explicit?
What kind of agitations are we talking about?
Yes, I said we have the self-determination groups, the IPOB, for instance. We have the Yoruba Nation agitators on another hand. And then we have the problems of insecurity. For instance, we have the insurgents, we have the bandits, all of them to have their grievances, And then we are working towards a general election. So I am asking, without the resolution of these issues, is it feasible to have an election?
Well, I think that the resolution of agitations along ethnic lines cannot be a precondition for holding any election. In my opinion, those who are agitating along ethnic lines have the right to so agitate, but they cannot impose their own choice, their own perspective on the entire society. They have a duty to convince other members of society, even members of their own ethnic group or groups, to agree with them. And I think people will not contest or vote on the identity of ethnic nationalities. They will vote, for or abstain to vote as individuals, as Nigerians.
Sorry, Barrister, we wouldn't also want to limit the fact that because Nigeria is a secular state, and of course we have different religion, we have different tribes, and now we do not want to preach the fact that people will want to vote for certain ethnicity, or possibly because people are asking based on their religion or based on what they are after in terms of their affiliation or their background. To be more explicit on what Barristers asked is the issue of inclusion. How much more do we include everybody on all sides in terms of the national agenda, which is Nigeria? I think that's the point he's trying to make here, because we have a Nigeria project, and the Nigerian project has to do with the election. And now for participation and inclusion of everybody in this project, how do we make it happen in such a way that everybody's rights are protected, not looking at the fact that I'm an Igbo, I'm a Yoruba, I'm an Hausa here. All right, before you answer that, let's just take this commercial break and we'll be right back.
$32 FM
94.9.
Wait. Remember our guy, Femo? What a character.
Yes, remember his usual 15 naira for 1 hour bundle on YouTube.
As in, he always knows the latest hits and bangers.
Yes, so even his comedy and series game is top notch.
Remember his nickname now?
Mr. Do It On Your Own. And also his come and see how to be this and that. Bros is well rounded.
Ada, come and see how to be a fashion designer.
Get 1 hour of YouTube video data for 50 naira and 3 hours for 130 naira on the MTN network. Simply dial *131 *8 *1# today. There's YouTube data for everyone on the MTN network.
Bójú
bá ń ṣepin àmọ́ ń yọ hàn ni ojúkòrò wọn ní kì í pojúkòrò jẹ bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ọ̀rọ̀ kì í sì tóbi jù ká fọ̀bẹ bù ẹnu làá fi sọ ìdí làá fi jókòó àmọ́ ṣá o tọ́rọ̀ bá kọlẹ̀ tó kòkè àwọn àgbà ní ó tún níbi tá à ń gbé e kà tó bá rí bẹ́ẹ̀ ẹ lọ fọkàn balẹ̀ gbogbo ọ̀rọ̀ tó bá rójú yálà àhesọ tó ń jà rìnrìn ni tàbí ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ àbáàdì ó lè jẹ́ òṣèlú ètò ọrọ̀ ajé ẹ̀ka amúlùúdùn eré ìdárayá kódà ó lè jẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹ̀sìn gbogbo tó bá wù ó jẹ́ tó bá ṣáà ti jẹ́ ọ̀rọ̀ ẹnu làá fi sọ lórí ètò gbàgede ọ̀rọ̀ ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ìṣẹ́gun Tuesday ní déédéé aago 11 òwúrọ̀ lórí ètò gbàgede ọ̀rọ̀ lèmi àtẹ̀yìn a ti máa gba oríṣiríṣi àlejò ńlá jàǹkànjàǹkàn tí ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń lọ nígboro bá kàn ẹnu oníkàn ṣáà ni wọ́n ní àti ń gbọ́ pọ̀n ń gbàgede ọ̀rọ̀ ní gbogbo ọjọ́ ìṣẹ́gun láago 11 pẹ̀lú àfùdá Samuel àjọmọ́ àṣẹ ni.
Hi. Yours very sincerely, Dean of the Old School here. Join me on Saturday evenings from 9 up until 10 o'clock on Classics, evergreen musical razzmatazz, bringing back goosebumps and magic moments of year gone by. You can look forward to Parade of Jazz, Classic Soul, Disco, Funk, Reggae, High Life, and a whole lot more. Classics from 3 decades ensures keeping oldies and music legends in your memory. The password game gives you an opportunity to win something good simply for tuning in. Music Celebrity Birthday rounds off the program on weekly basis. Join Sanjay on Classics Saturday evenings from 9 up until 10 o'clock. Right here, 32 FM 94.9 radio station. Together, let's reminisce.
wákàtí mẹ́rìnlélógún ní bẹ nínú ọjọ́ kan ṣùgbọ́n ọ̀kan nínú àwọn wákàtí wọ̀nyí ló lóyún ẹ̀rí fún ọ ó sì di dandan kó bí i. agogo tí ń ka wákàtí ọjọ́ ti ṣetán láti ka wákàtí rẹ̀ sí ire àti ẹ̀rí. bẹ́ẹ̀ ni wákàtí ẹ̀rí rẹ̀ dé lẹ́tọ̀ àdúrà orí afẹ́fẹ́ tó ń gbóná girigiri pẹ̀lú àwọn ẹ̀rí gbáǹkọ́gbì àti iṣẹ́ ìyanu lẹ́sẹ̀kẹsẹ̀. èyí tí ọlọ́run alààyè oníṣẹ́ ìyanu fi kọmọre Táíwò Àlàdé ta kókó ẹ̀. ṣé àṣeyọ̀wò lọ́ba mi òkè tí pín ire ayọ̀ ẹ̀rí ohun ẹ̀rín fúnirúurú èèyàn lọ́nà tó wù ú tí kò sẹ́ni tí ó yẹ lọ́wọ́ ẹ̀ wò. látòrí afẹ́fẹ́ lẹ̀rí ti ń sọ̀kalẹ̀ tóníkàlùkù sì ń retí ẹ̀ ṣe. ó yá jẹ́ ká darapọ̀ mọ́ kọmọre Táíwò Àlàdé Apostle Kobo fún ìdáhùn àdúrà lẹ́sẹ̀kẹsẹ̀ lórí afẹ́fẹ́ ìyẹn lórí ìkànnì 32 FM 94.9 ní gbogbo ìdájọ́ ọjọ́ Sunday láago 6 sí aago 7 òwúrọ̀ níbi tí wákàtí ẹ̀rí rẹ yóò ti máa farahàn tẹ̀rí tọ́lá tògo ti gbẹ́dìdì táráyé yóò sì máa kí ọ kú oríire. wákàtí ẹ̀rí rẹ dé ìwọ gangan lẹ̀rí kan. àwọn ọmọ ẹ̀rí ni wọ́n ṣonígbọ̀wọ́ ẹ̀.
orin yìí yóò ti ẹ̀rí rẹ̀.
bẹ́ẹ̀ni kì í ṣòní ó ti pẹ́ gan tọ́lọ́run alààyè tó lànà láàrin aginjù tó sì tún pín òkun pupa níyà ti ń gbẹnu Comrade Táíwò Àlàdé Apostle Kobo sọ̀rọ̀ agbára lórí afẹ́fẹ́ tí àwọn oníkòjìpò ènìyàn sì ń tipasẹ̀ rẹ̀ jẹ́rìí sí àmì àti ìyanu. orin ìyìn àti ẹ̀rí rẹ̀ ẹ jẹ́ ká pàdé Apostle Kobo nínú agbami ìyìn èyí tó ń ṣàtọ́kùn àwọn ẹ̀rí kọ̀ǹgbẹ̀kọ̀ǹgbẹ̀ ní ìkànnì 32 FM 94.9 ní dédé aago 9 sí aago 11 òwúrọ̀ 9 to 11 a.m. ní gbogbo ọjọ́ Sunday níbi tí ìyìn yóò ti máa pe ẹ̀rí ránníṣẹ́ sáyé oníkòjìpò ènìyàn tí ẹ̀rí yóò sì máa fọ̀hún yẹn nígbà tí a bá ń fi orin ìyìn fawọ́ Ọlọ́run wálẹ̀ fún iṣẹ́ agbára. ìwé mímọ́ sọ wípé ẹ wá sí àgbàlá rẹ̀ tẹ̀yìn torí yín kí ẹ sì yìn pẹ̀lú símbálì olóhùn gooro. abala àkọ́kọ́ lórí ètò ni abala yíyin Ọlọ́run níbi tí ẹ̀rí yóò ti máa fara. abala ẹ̀kejì ni abala tí a yà sọ́tọ̀ fún àwọn opó àti àwọn àkàndá ẹ̀dá. abala ẹ̀kẹta ni abala ǹjẹ́ ìwọ mọ bíbélì níbi tí a ó ti máa ṣe àtúpalẹ̀ ọ̀rọ̀ nínú bíbélì yálà láti inú èdè Hébérù tàbí Gíríkì. ìpàdé dọjọ́ Sunday ní aago 9 sí aago 11 òwúrọ̀ lórí ìkànnì 32 FM 94.9. Comrade Táíwò Àlàdé Apostle Kobo ti wà ní 32 FM 94.9. orin ìyìn àti ẹ̀rí rẹ ìwọ lẹ̀rí kàn.
Stay tuned to 32 FM 94.9.
All right, you're welcome back. You're still on to the podium, 32 FM 94.9. And of course, we still have Barrister Femi Aborishade with us in the studios this morning. All right, before we went on that break, Barrister, you were to answer a particular question in terms of including everyone, that no one is let out in terms of participation in the electoral process itself, sir.
Yeah, I think that challenge is for the political parties and their candidates to convince the electorate, and particularly those who are agitating along ethnic lines, to convince them that under their own watch, as leaders of Nigeria, particularly at the national level, their agitations will be examined, that they will address the question of poverty, because it is the question of poverty, exclusion, economic exclusion in particular, that is at the root of all the agitations. So the political parties, their candidates must convince the electorate that they will address the questions that are disturbing people, that are causing them to agitate along the lines of breaking up Nigeria. They have the right to so agitate, but it is better to address the question of poverty that affects everybody, particularly the poor people all over the country.
All right, let me just open the phone lines now in case you also want to call in before we round up this conversation. The numbers are 070-55,949, or you could call 080-97,949. And of course, we still stream live on Facebook. That is 32FM 949 Ibadan. You could actually drop your comments and follow us there. We still have Barrister Femi Aborishade with us in the studios. And now it also takes me down to the issue of the NFIU. Now, there is like a bracket as to what should be done in terms of withdrawal. And I know that it's very contentious, or will I say has become very controversial when this instances was brought up by the Central Bank of Nigeria in the light of an election year, saying as a matter of fact there's limitation to withdrawals. And now we do know that this time is a time where you have network issues, where you have instances of even communication error, because sometimes you want to communicate at this time. Looking at previous elections is very difficult. Now, NFIU is saying they're also going after anyone, especially those within the public bracket, anyone that defaults when it comes to all of this credit limits. Now, to put it in perspective, are the masses being factored in here? And why do you think the CBN governor is in a way trying as much as possible to run away from some of these instances by not even wanting to appear before the National Assembly to table some of these instances and address them logically?
Well, I think that from my point of view, the concern of the CBN is to curb the extent to which politicians can withdraw and compromise the credibility of the election. From that point of view, I would support the measures being put in place by the CBN.
Is it not against the people?
Well, I think it is essentially against it. It is the politicians who may find it difficult. As far as ordinary people are concerned, they may not be affected by the limits, that have been put by the CBN, in my opinion.
Now, let me ask Comrade this question just before, because I know time is very much against us. Our democracy, are we on track?
Well, as far as our so-called democracy is concerned, we are not operating or practicing democracy, in my opinion, because democracy, as popularly understood, is the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. But essentially, at every phase, the people, the ordinary people, have been excluded. Imagine the amount of money people have to pay before they can even stand as candidates, at the level of each of the political parties. Only people who have access to loot public votes can participate in this election. Ordinary people have been excluded. The field has been left open only to those who have succeeded in looting the treasury. For example, even in forming political parties, because it's only political parties that can, it is on the platform of the political parties that anyone can contest election currently. To form a political party, you need to have nationwide spread. The National Executive Committee of each political party should have members from at least 2/3 of the federation. The political party itself must have offices in not less than 2/3 of the federation. I advocate that if the people are to be included in the democratic process, then there ought to be a constitutional amendment that will recognize the right of any political party, even if the influence of that party is limited to one ward, one local government, one state. Any party should be able to participate, not necessarily until parties have nationwide structures.
So invariably, you're saying that it's too expensive to run a democracy.
Exactly, because poor people cannot form parties that will have nationwide spread. That in itself is an exclusive measure meant targeted against ordinary people.
Comrade, okay, I think we have a caller.
Okay. Please go ahead.
Yes. Wouldn't that be take us back, to the kind of situation that we experienced before, when we had about 75 political parties, and it only took the wisdom of INEC to win them, into the present 18 structure. If we go by the recommendation that you are proffering, don't you think we will likely burst the bubble with so many political parties, and which, in my view, will be unwieldy?
No, I think the question we should ask is, who is benefiting from the present arrangement? Only those who have succeeded in looting public treasuries are benefiting. Ordinary people would benefit when they have an opportunity to form political parties and they are limited to any level. I mean, if it's only one ward, only one local government, only one state, that my party has an influence, that party should be allowed to contest, and the electorate should be allowed to determine those parties that would remain on the ballot papers and those that will not be allowed. I mean, if a party doesn't have support, electoral support, year in, year out, they will most likely pack up. But that should not be imposed by INEC. That should not be imposed by any constitutional provision as we have it today. The present arrangement does not benefit the masses. It leaves the field open only to looters of public treasury.
Okay, sir. And yes, and just before we go, just this last question for me, for this program. The judiciary, in your view, sir, how has it played out under this democracy? Is it playing its role as should, or is there a problem, with the judiciary? Because it ought to be the window.
No, I think we should not focus, put the blame of our democratic experience on the judiciary. I think we should place the blame on the politicians that control the executive arm of government.
What is the
they are the ones that are intimidating them. They are the ones that are corrupting the judiciary.
All right, Mr. Aborisha, because of our time, what is the way forward, especially for many electorates that are listening to you this morning?
Yeah, the electorate should go out and cast their vote for parties that have programs that will benefit them. For example, if pensioners, if civil servants are receiving their salaries, their pensions as and when due, they should vote for such a party that has been fulfilling such an obligation, and not vote for a party that has a record of non-payment of salaries or pensions as and when due.
All right, on that note, we must say a big thank you to Mr. Femi Aborishade. He's a lawyer and, of course, a right activist. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. And to our earlier guests, too, we say a big thank you. That's Professor Oyewo and, of course, Barrister Ogolola. Thank you for joining this conversation this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, my name is GBOLABO. Famous School. Join us again next week for another interesting edition of The Podium. You want me to mention Yano?
Wa